Alright, so today we're going to take a look at the top plop lure and how I designed it. As you can see here, I'm in my blender. I just added a cylinder mesh. I'm going to rotate it, and I like to keep everything on one axis, so I'm going to use the x-axis. And here I'm using a combination of extrude, which is shortcut E on the keyboard, and scale, which is shortcut S on the keyboard, to elongate that cylinder and to change the diameter of it as I go along. The idea behind this lure is sort of like a popper, something to sit on the surface, and if you give it a good twist, something that will make a nice pop or plump sound. As you can see here, I'm going to the edge using the bevel tool on either end just to add in a couple more basically faces on either side. And I'm going to come to the front, and I'm actually going to inset the front face, so this will give me that little scoop in the front. Like I said, I'm working along the axis that keeps everything straight and keeps everything where you need it to be. Alright, then I'm going to come through with my switch to wireframe so I can select all these vertices, and then use a transform tool, and I'm actually going to widen this scoop so now it'll sit nice and flat. And I think I'm going to do the same in the back. Go ahead and select all of those, and I'm actually going to, instead of widening, I think I'm going to heighten them. Gives it a little bit more of a fishtail type of shape to it. Alright, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to come in, and now I need to add the holes for my line ties. So I'm going to add a cylinder. I'm going to elongate that cylinder. I don't need it very thick, I just need it to print out a hole for me to run a through wire through. I'm going to elongate and then rotate. And this is where, like I said, it's very important to keep everything on the axis. Keeps everything nice and straight. I'm going to elongate it just a little bit more. And it looks about right where I want it. I'm also going to come through, so this is where I add a boolean, I'm not really sure how to say it, operation to it. Basically what that does when you have it on difference, it will take the shape and cut the smaller cylinder out of the lure. Here I'm duplicating, and I'm going to go ahead and add a bottom hook holder hole. So I'm doing that by putting in another cylinder, the same diameter, located about where I want it on the bait. Make sure I put enough room above the main through wire hole that I can put a loop on the smaller wire so I can run it through. And once I get that set, I'm going to go ahead and go through with another Boolean operation difference with that cylinder. And now I can have a hole through all the way through, plus a hole coming out the bottom. And before I decide to do this, I'm actually going to come in, make this a little bit thicker. It looked a little thin on the design. It might have been brittle. So I made the scoop a little thicker and made it a little deeper as well. This will give me a nice scoop to work with. Alright, so now that we got the basic thing that we want, got everything where we need it to be, I'm going to go ahead and export this over to the slicer, and I use Cura slicer. So we'll go ahead and put that in now. Alright, so as you can see, it imports like this. Now if we were to print it out like this, we would end up with a huge support through the main through wire hole, which is not what we want. They're very hard to deal with when they're inside. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. Now this doesn't look bad, but it looks unstable. So it'd be best to probably flip it on its on the scoop side. As you can see, it prints out pretty cleanly. It's just I'm worried a little bit about the bed adhesion and it sticking through the whole thing. As you can see, I added in bed adhesion here, which adds a brim. But really, it would just be better to print it out like this, which would be more stable. It doesn't really affect the time any. And it looks pretty good. So the other things that we want to do is I want to split the infill. So I'm going to come over. I have it on 20%. I'm going to come over, add a support blocker. Add a support blocker in on the bottom side of the lure. Remember, the bottom side has the extra hook hole. And then I'm going to extend that to cover the bottom half of the lure. I'm going to have to bring it out a little bit more to get the whole thing. There we go. Alright. Then I'm going to go back over into the properties. Once I get it situated where I want it, go select settings, go over, hit infill, and you're going to close that out, and then you're going to scroll down on this menu with all the orange and set your infill. I believe I did 80% on this one, so it's a split 20% on top, 80% on the bottom. Once that's set, we should be good to slice it again, and we can get a preview. So that's what it looks like. As you can see, it's printing out 80% infill on the one side and 20% on the other. All right, now let's load it into the printer and see how it turns out. Alright, so I came out to the local pond, try this lure out. If you can listen close to the video, it's sped up a little bit, but you can hear it nice pops. So we'll see if we can get a bass to jump up and bite this thing. And unfortunately, I fished for about another 30 minutes to an hour and did not get any more bites, but I caught that one nice bass, so the lure is successful, I would say. Definitely one of those lures that when they're hitting top water, I feel like would be more useful, but definitely worth giving it a try, and we'll see what happens with the next one.